G'day Bomber fans, there has been plenty to like about the last fortnight if you are a fan of the AFL club, which I would assume you are if you clicked on this video. As for the VFL team, it's been pretty painful, but today I'm going to go over the AFL listed players currently playing in the reserves, talk about how they're tracking and who we could potentially see at AFL level soon. Let's get into it. And before I do actually, thank you to Talia for recommending chucking in each player's draft position, a bit of a no-brainer. If you guys have any ideas of how my videos can be improved, leave them in the comments below. I may not always reply, but I do check just about every comment left down there. First, let's start with a super quick recap of our matches that we played in this last period. We started the fortnight with a loss against Footscray in a curtain raiser game at Marvel Stadium. It was a tight game early. We had the better of them in the first half, led by Tad under a goal, but they piled on 9 to our 4 in the second half to run out 34-point winners. It's a bit of an issue, our VFL team, and our second half lapses. We've been quite poor in third quarters. The Southport game, that was a really painful one. We had that tied up. It was buried. We led by 3 goals with, I think, just a little under 5 minutes left, but somehow Southport found a way to get the job done. We threw it away, really. We should have won. We had the game won, but we found a way to lose, so we are now 0-4, off to a very poor start, but let's look at the individuals who have been pretty decent. Starting with Elijah Tsatas, who has only played a half of VFL footy in this little period. He played half a game against Footscray because he was the carry-over emergency for the AFL team, and he obviously played on Friday night against the Crows in the AFL, albeit as the sub. He was really good against Footscray, though. He was involved in everything early. I loved his tackling pressure. It was a very mature performance and a good response from being left out of the team the week before. I think we probably need to see him get a full game somewhere soon, though, whether at AFL or VFL level, just for his own fitness and, I guess, conditioning. I would suspect he is demoted to the reserves for Anzac Day with all the players we possibly have returning, which isn't a bad thing in the long run. Shiel returned to the footy field on limited minutes against Footscray. He played about a half, I'll say, so he only got 18 touches, but with a full game, it probably would have been around the 30 mark. He was clearly an AFL player in a level below. He just looked cleaner in contests. He had some really nice clearances, and it was the same story against Southport in the more recent game. He played most of the match, had some resting minutes up forward and on the wing, possibly a sign that he was being nursed late and could be used on Anzac Day, or at least there is the option for it now. But in his 2 games, he has just looked a level above, as I said. I think the interesting thing is that he has been used more as an in and under contested player, at least in the recent game he was more. He had 24 touches, but 20 of them were handballs, and that's because for a lot of the game he was getting those ground balls and feeding them out. I thought he was really good though, really clean with his hands, especially early in the game. He did fade a bit when he was starting to get a bit more rest outside of the contest, but he was hard at it, he was tough. I think he is definitely a sub option for the game on Thursday. Sam Weideman, now he was played as a forward against the Bulldogs. He had a tough outing, 1 behind. I can only really remember 1 or 2 instances where he had a say on play. Our forward line was looking a bit cluttered with Visentini, Weideman, Caddy, and some other VFL listed players down there. But against Southport, he was moved back to defence because of this, and I thought he was fantastic. He was our deepest defender. He was allowing Hayes to roam forward to intercept more up the ground. He was really solid, a bit of a selfless game at times, but had quite a lot of the ball as well. He had some moments that should have been game-saving, but the rest of the squad just weren't on the same wavelength. I think he's losing his place as a key forward in the side, so this was a beneficial move for him and the reserves team. He's already made defensive option. He reads the play well down there. I don't think it's for the future. I'd still prefer Reid and Baldwin and Ridley in the AFL side, but for depth, it's good for Weideman to be playing there, especially when he's playing well. He seemed to have lots of confidence. Lewis Hayes. Now, in the VFL, I guess if you're not watching, you'd obviously understand that Nate Caddy and Shiel and those other players are the ones getting all the attention, but Lewis Hayes is awesome. I am super hyped for this kid. He's a mini Dustin Fletcher. Both his games in this period, he has arguably been best on ground. He just doesn't get beaten much as a key defender unless he's against a much stronger opponent because he's still lean. The one thing he doesn't have is muscle, but the signs are there. I really think he could be a player. Those long arms make intercepting easy for him. His ball use is genuinely good. It's why he gets so much of the ball that we use him for a kick. And the thing is, in his first few games, including the Dogs match, his disposal tally flatters him a bit. 20 odd in every game really, but it's because of our lack of direct ball movement in D50. But against Southport, he was getting the ball up the ground quite a lot, and that's partly thanks to Weideman, who allowed him to push up more, so we kept the ball in our attacking 50. I personally think the Southport game is the best I've seen Lewis Hayes play so far in his short career. We should really be happy with the way he's developing. He is now posing serious questions to the match committee. He is arguably just about ready for AFL football the way he's playing, but of course it would need to be against a team without much muscle in the forward line because he's still very skinny. Nick Bryan is still plugging away in the reserves. He had the better of AFL listed ruckman Rory Lobb and Ryan Gardner against Footscray. He had almost 40 hitouts while they combined for a little over 25. He also started to get involved around the ground more, which is the one thing that's been holding him back a bit recently. AFL listed ruckmen really need to do that in the VFL to ensure they are at least considered for the senior team, and the game against Southport was a pleasure from that regard. He had 33 hitouts, less than usual, but he managed over 20 touches, had some really good moments in the air, used his tank to outrun his opponents. That was easily his best game of the year so far. We just need to see more of that for him to stake his claim for the AFL. If an opportunity arises, it needs to get to the stage where the coaches simply can't say no to having him in the squad, because the first few rounds he was good but not thoroughly dominant in all aspects, and the Southport game was the first time he properly showed that in 2024. Nate Caddy, he hasn't blown a game open yet like we're wanting to see, and I think until he does that, he's probably a little bit away off the AFL team with Jones playing as well as he is. But Caddy is looking exciting. I love his attack on the ball. He flies at everything, gives it a good crack. It's a good thing to have a player like that in the forward line who may not necessarily have a good game but has an impact with the things he does. Against the Dogs, he had an almost day, 1 goal from 3 or 4 shots, a few siders, and although the stats were the same in the Southport match, you felt his presence was larger. He kicked the opener, which was a beauty. Should have had another, but his free kick was overturned because of a Jayden Davey off the ball push. But he had some really good moments, although we do need to see more of him before he makes his debut. Jones is hitting the scoreboard more at AFL level than Caddy is in the VFL, but we expected him to take a bit longer to get going. Young key position player, you can't set the world alight instantly. I do hope we see a little haul at some stage though. Luamon Lual had a pretty fun game against Footscray. He didn't get heaps of the ball, but you felt a shift when he got it in his hands. When he gets the pill, you feel the opposition are on their toes, and to be fair, it doesn't always work out. He does run himself into trouble a lot. It's something we highlighted quite a lot in his draft campaign. We knew this would happen, but he brings aggression with his play style, and there is a real dare with the way he plays. He just hasn't been getting his hands on the ball enough though. He didn't have much of an impact against Southport, I felt. I think his first couple of games were more impressive than the two we've just seen, in my opinion. You might disagree, but I think we're a fair way off seeing him at his best. I should say though, his defensive work was pretty good in this little block of games, so that's a nice little unexpected positive. Jayden Davey, I'm not going to lie, I've been disappointed with his last fortnight because he's been the AFL listed emergency, I think, for both the games in this period. So he should be performing to try and get that spot, because our forward line is obviously in the AFL team, it's not 100% yet. I thought his Footscray game was his worst performance at the time though. Just the 5 touches, a couple of tackles, but never really looked comfortable in the game. And against Southport, he was more active. He kicked a really nice roving goal, and he probably should have kicked another one. He missed one he should have nailed. He applied good pressure in forward 50 as well, but he just lost his head a lot. I thought he was at least involved more than he was in the Footscray game, but he had some moments he would like back. He gave away a needless free kick when Caddy was walking back to his mark to kick an easy goal. He gave away a 50-metre penalty in the last quarter that resulted in a shot on goal, and realistically probably should have given away another 50-metre penalty, but the umps luckily turned a blind eye. It was a really frustrating game from Davey, but one he can definitely learn from. Hopefully we don't see any mistakes like that again. If this becomes a regular occurrence, it would dent his chances of featuring at AFL level, but I'm confident we won't see Davey play this recklessly again. Archie Roberts, his good form has been rewarded recently. He has been a feature of the AFL team's emergency, which is a good step for him. He was uncharacteristically quiet against Footscray. There were a couple of times I forgot he was even playing in the first quarter or two. He did find his footing a bit later in the game, but overall that performance was a touch below where he should be. And Southport, the stats look good, but I would actually say this is his least impressive performance for me. And it exposed a little issue that I want to see addressed. He's very reliant on his left boot, or his left side of his body. When exiting the defensive half, he turned the ball over under no pressure quite a few times, simply because he just couldn't wheel onto his left. He is a lovely kick on one half of his body, it's what he's known for. On the other half, he's a bit of a liability, so I'd love to see him really work on his ball use on his right side, whether it is his right boot or the outside of his left when he uses it, because that's something he does a lot. Instead of using his right boot, he uses the outside of his left, and it's obviously a hard kick to pull off all the time. We're only 4 games into his professional career, so can't complain too much. Of the AFL listed players, he has been one of our best consistently. I'm only being harsh because of the high standards he's set for himself. Vigo Visentini, I'm starting to really like this guy a lot. He was poor against Footscray, he was a non-entity for most of the game, and that is to be expected. Rookie key position players will always falter in their first year. We weren't expecting him to be incredibly consistent, but that Southport game, he was genuinely a game changer. He turned the tide late in the piece, almost won us the match off his own boot. He kicked 3 goals, had a couple of really strong contested marks, but he is a ruckman, but playing most of his time up forward, and I like that because Nick Bryan is obviously our main ruck. We're seeing plenty to like so far early in his career. He just needs to bridge together his worst and his best a bit, because right now his worst is really bad and his best is quite good. It's hard for a young ruckman to find consistency though at his age, but he has been a bit of a surprise so far. I wasn't expecting him to be genuinely impacting games like he has this early into his career. Still nowhere near playing AFL footy, but he is currently ahead of schedule. Tex Wanganeen, he had limited minutes both weekends, came on late against Footscray, only had a few touches, didn't do too much. Southport, I think he came on in the second quarter, I think. Could be wrong, correct me if I am. Another fairly quiet game for the most part, with a few really classy moments involved. His goal late in the game was just awesome, that run down the wing. He just does things that make you think if he could piece it all together in a game more consistently, get his hands on the ball more, he could be a real player, but he just goes missing a lot. We shouldn't be judging him based on this fortnight. He is returning from a longer injury, so we should see how he goes in the next patch. But that is all. Those are the AFL listed Essendon players that we have seen at VFL level. Let me know down below who you are most keen to see at AFL level. Like if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, and go Bombers.